Hi, this is a short video on alterations in sodium balance. Hang on and we'll move forward. So when you're in this picture, we see that we have the cell and you have the blood. And there's equal amounts of solute or sodium in both the cell and the blood. So because there's equal amounts, there's no really movement of the solute back and forth. Of course, the sodium-potassium pump is, that there is movement back and forth with that. But in the normal setting, when you have equal amounts on both sides of that membrane, there's no movement taking place. Well, what happens in hyponatremia is you have less solute out in the blood than in the cells. So because of that, then what happens is you have water move from the vasculature into the cells to kind of equal things out. And when that happens, what you end up with is swelling of the cells. And this isn't good. The other thing that can happen with hypernatremia, in this case, you have less solute in the cells than in the blood. So again, water moves to equalize this. And what you get is you have water coming from the cells into the vasculature. And when that happens, you end up with cell shrinkage. And this isn't good either. So when these instances happen, what you end up getting, either with the swelling or with the shrinkage, that is when you start to get symptoms. So what are the symptoms? The symptoms are going to vary depending upon how they'll be more severe if there's a greater change in sodium, either up or down. And it also depends, how the severity of the symptoms also depends on how quickly this change occurs. The quicker this change in sodium occurs, the more severe the symptoms. So let's look at these symptoms. When you think sodium, you want to think neuro, though there's some other symptoms as well. But first off, you want to think neuro. On the severe end of this spectrum, when you have severe alterations in sodium, you're going to get things like seizures and coma. On the really mild end, you're going to be completely asymptomatic. The hard part is in between. In the in between, that's when you deal with things such as nausea, vomiting, confusion, a gait disturbance, maybe a headache. These symptoms are vague and they sometimes can be easily missed. So what do we do for hypernatremia? Well, generally hypernatremia is caused by a volume deficit. So if they're in the asymptomatic hypernatremia, you usually can treat this with just PO fluids. If they have severe hypernatremia and they're symptomatic, that's when you're going to treat them with D5W. You're going to try to add water in but not add sodium. In the in-between and a moderate, you're going to add either normal saline or half normal saline. And you'll say, well, wait a minute, why they're hypernatremia, why would you have any sodium added at all? But remember, this is a volume issue. So yes, you're going to add, even though you're adding a lot of volume, so you also will need to add some sodium if this is a moderate kind of hypernatremia. Those are most common. The most common kind of hyponatremia is caused from water loss. However, there's a lack of water. However, there's a few instances and when you have increased amounts of solute or sodium, and this is not from eating too much salt. Generally, these are very rare, and it would be something like receiving too much of a hypertonic IV fluid. You can get this with Cushing syndrome, with hyperaldosteronism, or from a saline abortion. Again, these are rare. Most commonly, hypernatremia is a fluid issue. Now, so what about hyponatremia? In hyponatremia, in very severe cases, when they're symptomatic, they have a very low sodium, you're going to treat them with 3% normal saline. In moderate, you might just treat them with regular sodium. And then if it's mild, and we're going to get to this later, that's when you're going to have to figure out what's the cause. So again, very severe, 3% sodium, a moderate hyponatremia, normal saline. And if it is low, but it's very mild, you're still going to have to figure out what's going on. When you are correcting sodium, you want to do it slowly. You don't want to do it very quick, 'cause when you're giving 3%, that can be dangerous. So you want to correct this slowly, at just a half a point of sodium an hour or something of that nature. If you go too fast, you can cause some shifts with their osmolality, and this can lead to osmotic demyelinization. And this is when you have a demyelinization relative to these shifts in fluid. And this can lead to dysarthria, dysphagia, quadriplegia, movement disorders, behavioral disorders, seizures, lethargy, confusion, and coma. Also can lead to a locked-in syndrome when they're awake, but they're unable to move or verbally communicate. These may or may not be reversible, so that's why you have to be extremely careful when correcting these low sodiums. Exactly what's going on. The way we're going to figure out the cause and what's going on with these low sodiums is we're going to get a serum osmolality. If it is normal, then great. This is an isotonic hyponatremia. In this instance, if you have an isotonic hyponatremia, there's really not much else to do. So what if you have elevated serum osmolality? This is going to that would mean you have a hypertonic hyponatremia. So what's going to cause that? What's going to cause, it's kind of a dehydration type thing, but what are some causes of hypertonic hyponatremia? When you look at that, you're going to have, in this instance, you're going to have more or less solute, or you're going to have a more solute compared to the amount of water. What are some causes of this? Some things that we see cause this are elevated glucose levels and alcoholism. And if you look over in this picture, what you see here with the glucose being the big purple ones and the sodium being the little green ones. While there's still not a lot of sodium, there is a lot of solute in that space. So that's what makes it hypertonic. And both elevated glucose levels and alcoholism can cause it. So, of course, you would want to treat the underlying causes. The other one is when you have low serum osmolality. So you have a hypotonic hyponatremia. Then we've got to look even a little deeper. We want to get our answers from our H&P. That's going to give us the clues as to what is causing this hypotonic hyponatremia. When you're talking about hypotonic, you remember that you're going to have not a lot of solute in there. It would be something like this picture here, but take out the little purple dots. Hypotonic. So we're going to look at our H&P. First thing we want to look at is volume. If the volume is up, that means we got a lot of volume, but just a little bit of solute, then what do we need to do? We need to diurese. What if our volume is down? And that's a common cause of hyponatremia. If our volume is down, then boom, we're going to give IV fluids. And this is the most common. But there's some other things too. What if we're euvolemic? Volume is not an issue. It's not either up nor down. Then what? Then we're going to look at several possibilities. And you can look this in the acronym RATS. One of them, renal tubular acidosis, Addison's disease, a thyroid imbalance, or SIADH. We won't get deep into SIADH in this lecture because we're going to talk about it later, but these are some of the causes of euvolemic hyponatremia, and we would need to treat the underlying causes. So that is sodium imbalances in a nutshell. Remember, you want to look at, for these manifestations. In severe instances, you can also get some cardiac manifestations such as tachycardia, weak pulse, hypotension as well. All right, thank you.